The next step is going to be to make some curvature here and start to make the area for this hole, as well as bring everything towards the center, create this circular area, and then create all these extra parts here that would be on the inside, or all these extra extrusions. And then eventually we'll start making this area that goes around, as well as filling in the rest of these sections here. So we're going to go back to our Blender file. This is it. And I want to hide this empty, so I'm going to right click on it, H to hide. In order to create that curvature, instead of doing it by hand, I did a different method, and that's using the shrink wrap modifier. So we're going to use an object to shrink wrap this to in order to get the perfect geometry that we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to create in object mode, and we're going to create a circle, change the vertex count to 50 and press enter, tab into edit mode, RY, then 90, press enter. We're going to do 3 for side view, Z for wireframe, S to scale this down or up depending on what you need. So what we're going to do is make one ring that goes around for where the metal starts to crease or starts to bend. We're going to have another loop for where it bends down a little bit. And then we're going to have another loop for where it finally connects back up towards the center. If you want a better reference of how this shape is bent, you can look in the description. It's the same picture that I had in the last one, but it's a much better visual reference than this picture is, so I would suggest looking at it. So we're just going to scale this until we have it where we want it, approximately at the outside of this ring. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, scale it down to that second part, and then E to extrude, right click to cancel, and actually I want to change this to median point. So just change it to median point and then do S to scale. The way we want to do this is we want to bring this back some so that it's getting that depth that we need. And then we want to alt right click on this other edge and just bring it back slightly, because this outer edge is approximately even with the rest of it, and then it starts to come down slightly, and then it starts to go down a lot more than that. So this will be our reference. But you'll notice the normals are messed up, so we're going to do A twice, and mesh, normals, flip normals. We're also going to press tab to go to object mode, go to tools, and turn on smooth shading so we have smooth shading. Then we're going to go back to edit mode by pressing tab, bring this back a little on the x-axis, and then you want to grab it on the x-axis, hold control, and snap it to one of these points here, so that it's roughly in line with all the rest of these vertices. So now we just want to make sure that these loops are in the correct position. So we're going to select the rim, just go to object mode, select the rim, and press tab. So we want this outer one lined up approximately with this one that we've already created, and the inner one to be approximately with this inner one. So we're just going to select this other object we made and make sure we're in edit mode, and then alt right click, S to scale this down until it's where these other ones are. Just keep switching back between the objects to make sure that everything is lining up the way it should. So you just want all the lines to kind of line up here like that. Once you have that and you're satisfied with the way that it looks, we're going to add the shrink wrap modifier. So select your rim, should be orange, add modifier, and choose the shrink wrap. We want it to be the first modifier, so we're going to have to go down, click the up arrow. That's going to bring it up one. Click the up arrow again. That's going to bring it up again. So now it's at the top. We don't have a target yet, so we're going to click the eyedropper. Hover over the newly created object, which is in this case circle 8. Left click on it. We're not getting the result that we want. Then we need to change this from nearest to project. And we need to turn off positive, and we're going to turn on negative in a second, but first we actually have to make some changes, because if we do that we get this crazy result. And the reason for that, we're just going to press tab, is that we have all these extra vertices down here. We really only want the flat surface to start out with, and anything that got extruded and brought back we need to kind of get rid of so that it's not negatively affecting the shrink wrap modifier. So what we need to do is select this vertex here, hold control, right click on this, and then we also need to select all the other vertices. So you can do C for circle select and Z for wireframe, and just select all these vertices down here. Press delete and choose vertices. We need to do the same on the inside. We need to take this vertex and this vertex. Do delete and choose vertices. Now when we turn on the negative, we're starting to get the result that we want. So you can see that the rim is now bending according to the shape that we have on this bowl. This is basically a bowl shape. And if you want to, at this point, you can select this bowl shape, tab to edit mode, and you can adjust by alt right clicking on this. You can adjust the depth of this as necessary, and the rim will automatically change according to how you change the depth. You will notice these vertices didn't get snapped, and that's really just because they don't have any faces connected to them. Like the vertices by themselves are not going to snap. So we're going to do 3 for side view, Z for wireframe, and we're going to add in some extra faces. So we're going to select these 3 vertices, E to extrude, right click to cancel, change this to 3D cursor, S to scale, and scale it in a little bit, because we can see that this continues on like this, the shading. So now we want to select these 4 vertices, F to make a face. We're not going to make the hole initially, we're just going to make this a flat surface, and then we'll use the knife project to create the hole as we've done before. So we're going to select these 2 vertices, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and we're just going to press G to move these down. Trying to keep a similar angle. And then we're going to take these 3 again. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale them down. Just go until this last vertex is close to the edge, close to this edge. And you can even reposition these a little bit closer if you want. And then continue moving these closer with S to scale if you want to. So the only thing left really is to finish adding in some more geometry here. So what we can do is select this vertex, E to extrude, and bring it over so we have another vertex to make a more circular shape. And then select these 4 and press F, and select these 4 and then press F. We're getting some problems here, and that's because the normals are messed up. So we're just going to make sure we're in edit mode, press A. If you need to, press A twice and then press Control N. And that should solve any problems that you have. So now you can see that this rim is now starting to take shape. If you want to, you can hide this other object. Just select it with right click and press H. That's going to hide it. Just make sure you're in object mode when you do that. So now you can get a better look of how your rim is starting to look. It's got that curvature that it's supposed to have. And again, if you need to, you can do Alt H, select the empty and hide it, select this, press Tab, and you can still adjust how much curvature your rim is going to have. So if you want it to be extremely curved, you can make it further back on the x-axis, and then it will be really far in. But I think something more like how I had it is a bit more accurate. So maybe something like this is probably a lot closer. Maybe a little further back. But whatever you think is the appropriate distance, just go with that. It's important to get the distance correct now because we are going to be applying the shrink wrap modifier. So if you don't get the correct distance now, it'll be a little bit more difficult to go back and actually change it. So just make sure you get the distance that you like. Another thing we have to do is start filling in this area between right here. So we want to do Control R and left click and maybe bring this down a little to approximately here. I guess that's fine. And then select these inner vertices, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and just drag them to the center. If you want to, you can change this to median point so that the gizmo is right here instead. I'm just going to leave mine on 3D cursor. The next thing to do is make sure that all these are actually circular. So we want to select this vertex, hold Control, right click to select this one, Alt Shift and S, and that's going to do 2 sphere. Just make sure you go to 1. Down at the bottom it should say 1 when you do Alt Shift and S. And that'll create a nice circle in the center. We are getting a little shading problem. We'll deal with that a little bit later. Or we could actually just do it now, I guess. To fix that, we can just merge right here. We can merge this over. So we can select this one, hold Shift, select this one, Alt M at last, and then do the same here. Select this one, Shift select this one. You can do Shift R to repeat the previous action, and that should correct the shading in that area a little bit. We may want to actually reposition this vertex because it's a bit close to that one, and that's part of the problem. So if we do G, or you can do G twice to slide it and move it over, and then you're going to have to select all these with Alt right click, Alt Shift and S, and do 2 sphere again to make sure that it's still circular, and that should help a bit with the shading since they're not as close anymore. And I think that looks fairly decent. To create the center details, again, you can't see them as well in this picture as you can in the other picture. So I have my other rim here, which is kind of my reference. So we'll do something similar to this. So with these selected, if you don't have them selected, just Alt right click and make sure you get these. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and you also want to make sure you have this on 3D cursor. S to scale, Shift and X to exclude the X-axis and bring this in slightly. And we actually may need to, before we do this, we actually should probably apply our other modifier. So I'm just going to delete these by pressing delete and choosing vertices. So just make sure you have the correct depth at this point. Make sure everything is looking the way you want it. And if you want to, just save it first. Do file save so that you can go back to this point if you need to, and then apply the shrink wrap modifier. So at this point we're not using the shrink wrap modifier anymore. We can alt right click on this inner part, 3 for side view, E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X. Bring this in slightly, E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring it back slightly. And in this case we really want to do it pretty small. 3 for side view, E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X, and then scale it down small again. E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X, and bring it in again. Maybe a little bit more. Then E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X. Do a small one to help correct the shading. E to extrude, right click to cancel. Bring this back. We're getting some shading problems, and maybe that's because we don't have smooth shading on. So I'm going to press tab and turn smooth shading on. That'll correct some of the shading problems. So again, in side view, we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X, scale it in slightly. And it's going to just be the same process where we do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X over and over again until we get the correct shape here. You just want to make sure that you always have 2 loops before you extrude and then bring it back like this. So whenever you extrude and bring it back, you want to have 2 loops close and then 2 loops close, 2 loops close, and just keep the same strategy throughout the whole process. Doing E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X, and then do it again. And one more time, and then extrude and finally bring this backwards. And this is probably the last one. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. If you need to, if you want to, you can always change the radius of some of these. You can go and alt right click on some of these. Go to side view, scale with S, Shift and X, and then change some of these according to what you think is appropriate. So if you think it's too small or too large, you can still go back and scale. Like I think maybe this first one is a little bit too large, so I can go through and select all these, go to side view, S, Shift and X, and bring them back some until I have something that looks better, or at least better in my opinion. Once you're happy with what you have, of course, you can save it, so just go to File, Save. To create the hole that's going to be here, we're just going to use a circle and then use knife project. So in object mode, go to create, choose circle. We're going to change the vertex count to 20, press enter, Tab to edit mode, RY, then 90, press enter. 3 for side view, Z for wireframe, S to scale this down and bring it up on the Z-axis. Make sure you bring it straight up on the Z-axis. S, well, if you're going to scale it again, you need to go to median point instead. Change it to median point, then S to scale. And you want to try to get the size to be approximately the same size as this circle. The picture was taken at an angle, of course, so you're not going to get it exact. Just do the best you can to get a rough estimate of where the circle should be. I'm just going to check my reference here. So I think I want the circle to be a little smaller so it kind of meets up with this point. So I'm going to make sure I go back into my circle and scale it down, and maybe bring it even down a bit until it's closer to that point. So that looks pretty good, I think. These points seem to line up relatively close. There's a little bit of distance here, like there's supposed to be according to the reference, where there's a little bit of distance. So this looks pretty good in my opinion. Just make sure your circle is to the left of your rim and you should be alright. Then in object mode, with the circle selected, do shift and right click to select the rim, tab to edit mode, 3 for side view, go to the tools menu, go down a bit, knife project. This creates that circle. The circle also has a crease line running around it, and then it gets extruded inward. But we also want to create this other indent at the same time as we do the circle indent. So we're going to go to face select. And one thing we may want to do first is actually go to vertex select and make sure this vertex got joined with the other vertex. But I want to hide this other object that we used for knife project. So I'm going to press tab, select the circle, and press H to hide it since we're done with it. Then select the rim and press tab. And I'm just going to check to make sure that these two joined correctly. And in my case they did. If yours didn't, you can merge the one that was up here to the circle. And then you should be fine. Now what we want to do is go to face select, and we're going to start selecting some of these faces. There's another face here for some reason. Okay, that's the one for this, so we can just ignore that. So we want to select the circle, and we also want to select these faces here, because these here are going to be for this thing. But I think maybe we want to do the inset first. I can't remember what I did on the other one. So we're going to select these, we're going to do the inset first, and then press B for border. So you just do I for inset, B for border, and inset this a little bit, not too much. Then we're going to do C for circle select, and select these faces here. And now we can do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring these back, and we'll see how this works. This works out. So we're going to get some problems here. So we probably need to continue this down here eventually. But I think we can deal with that after. So we're going to select this face here. We don't need it. We're going to press delete and choose faces. Now we want to select our circle again. And we can do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and just bring it back on the x-axis as far as you think you need to. and then do I to inset, B for border, and do another small inset to help correct the shading on the bottom there. We're going to try to correct the shading here. We need to continue this down in order to do that, so we can do 3 for side view, K for the knife cut tool, left click here, and then left click here and press enter. So that should have helped correct the shading there, but we need to get rid of some of the n-gons, so we're going to go to vertex select and try joining these two. So select this one, shift select this one, alt M at last, and that created a problem, so we're going to do Control Z to undo that. And we're actually just going to select this one and shift select this one and press J and see how that looks. So that looks fine to me. We do have a shading issue here. We'll deal with that next. But we want to get rid of this extra edge. So we're going to go to edge select, select this edge, delete, dissolve edges. So all we did really was just continue this along to help correct the shading. And then we joined it down here to prevent it from continuing all the way down and causing more shading issues. So we're going to go to vertex select. We're going to select this vertex, shift select this one, and J to join, because that was giving us a bit of a problem as well, apparently. And what we may want to do is actually continue this around as if it was a shading correction thing. So we're going to do K for the knife cut tool, left click here, bring it to the center, left click, press enter. And we're going to see if we can get rid of this edge. So we're going to go to edge select, select this edge, delete, dissolve edges, and we're going to see if this helps a bit. So I'm just sliding these down with G twice, trying to correct the shading in that area, or at least trying to improve the shading as much as I can. We're just going to save it, file save. To continue this, we're going to press tab to go to edit mode. We're going to select these 3 vertices here, and we're going to press E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring this down some on the x-axis. If you want a better reference of this part of the rim, of course you can look at the reference linked in the description. It's a better reference than the one we have in the background. Now we're going to press 3 to go to side view, E to extrude, right click to cancel, change this to 3D cursor, S to scale, and bring this out until this vertex is lined up with the reference. Then you can select this vertex, G to grab, and bring it over, G to grab on this one, bring it approximately halfway between these two, and line it up with the reference. With this method, we can get some undesirable shading in this area. One way that can help fix that is to change this to median point. Select these 3 vertices, S, X, and 0, and then press enter. That will put these at the same X value. You're still getting some issues here, so we can go to these 3, S, X, and then 0, and press enter. And that can help a little with correcting the shading. It will look better once we add a subdivision surface modifier. I'll just show an example. So this is what it looks like with subdivision surface. I'm just going to remove that real quick, but you can see that the issues are reduced once we add in that modifier. And with this model, we may be adding in that modifier, so that will help later on, so this is not much of a problem. This part of the rim connects up to this part here. So we're going to select this vertex, hold shift, right click to select this vertex, and then press F to make a face, or in this case an edge. We want to bring this geometry over to connect to this area down here. But we have 3 vertices here and we have 2 vertices here. And we actually have some vertices that are not necessary. Like, we don't actually need 2 sets of vertices in this area. This crease line is supposed to end approximately here. So what we can do is select this vertex, shift select the one that's above it, Alt M and at last, and that will get rid of this lower vertex. And then you can select this one, hold Control, right click to select these, press delete and choose vertices. And now we're down to just 2 vertices and 2 vertices. So we can connect these if we want to. So what we're going to do is select these here. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring them back on the x-axis. Then we're going to take these 2 and press F, that'll fill in that gap. And we can take these 2 and press F to fill in this gap as well. If you want to, you can bring this one back some, and you can bring this one back some as well to create a straighter, smoother transition in this area. So now we have this right here, but we still need to fill in this gap here. What we're going to do is do Control R, left click, G twice to bring this down some. And then we're going to bring it forward some, because the shape of this is it's skinnier up in this area. It gradually gets wider, and then towards the end it has a much sharper increase in width here. So it's more like this in shape. Another thing we can do is get rid of a bunch of these vertices in this area. We need these 2 because these are part of that crease line. But the rest of these we can merge into one vertex. So we can select this one, hold Control, right click to select all these, hold Shift, deselect this one, and then select it again to make it the active vertex. The active vertex is shown in white instead of orange. Then we can do Alt M and choose at last, which will merge it to the vertex that was colored white. Select this one, hold Control, select this one, Shift, right click, deselect, Shift, right click to select, Alt M, at last, and then repeat the process to merge these to this point as well. That will still give us a nice looking mesh because this area was flat to begin with. So having triangles in this area is not going to cause any problems. And reducing the vertex count is just nice in this case. I'm going to reposition this to be more in line with this vertex here. So we can now select these 2 and press F, and that will connect these 2. We're going to need more vertices to connect these. We have 4 vertices that need connections. So we're going to do Control R, mouse wheel up until we have 4, and then left click. Then we can select these 2, and then continue pressing F until everything is filled in. Now you should have a nice outer part of this spoke here. The only thing is we have a jagged transition. In the real thing it would be much smoother, so what we would want to do is we would actually want to try to smooth out this transition. We could bring this one up some and back some, and we could do the same with these until we have a smoother transition, and possibly bring this one back some as well until you have a shape that is closer to the reference that's linked in the description, because that one gives you the best view of how this is actually shaped. This is relatively close to the shape of that part without actually having a reference myself. This looks pretty good. So we can save it. We can just go to File and Save. Next, we're going to work on bringing this part of the model down, as well as connecting the rest of this geometry in here. So we're going to select these three. You want to make sure you select this one and this one, so the ones that are further down and have no other connections, select those three. E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring them back on the x-axis. If you want to, do G then X, hold Control and snap to this point. That will make sure that these have the same X value as these. Now what we want to do is 3 for side view, and we can select these three as well. Change this to 3D cursor. We want to make this a circular shape because it would be a circular shape. So we're going to do Alt Shift and S. Drag it until the value is at 1 in the bottom left. And then left click. If you want to, you can use S to scale this out so that these match up again with the reference. This will give us a more circular shape all the way around. I'm going to change this back to median point. I'm going to do S, X, and then 0 to make sure that these have the same X value, because I noticed that the shading was not so good. And then drag these back a little to make sure it still matches up well with this curve here. The next thing we want to do is start bringing these over to here. This part of the rim needs to connect down to here. So we're going to do, first we actually need to bring this one down to meet up with this part here. So we're going to do E to extrude on this one, right click to cancel, bring it back, snap it to this point on the x-axis, select these two and press F, and that will continue this down to here. So this one needs to go down to that point. So we can bring this down, hold Control and snap it to this point. And we can actually select these 5 here and press F to make a face. We're going to need to make another edge loop to connect to this one. That's why the shading is bad, but we will deal with that a bit later. So I think actually the first thing that's going to make this easier is just select one of these vertices, hold Control, right click to select all of these, S, X, and then 0, and then press Enter, drag these back some, then we can do R then Y to rotate this a bit until we start to get more of an angle to this shape. And just reposition it, and then do R then Y if you want to change how the shape is looking. In order to correct this shading, we can do Control R, left click, and drag this up. You can do E to enable the even option. Bring it up to about here so it lines up with this. Then select these two and J to join. That will correct the shading in this area. Another thing we can do is just select these two vertices here. Do Alt-M at last to merge them at the last point. And then select this one, hold Shift, select this one, do Shift-R to repeat so that we still have a quad here. And we want to merge these over as well. So we're going to select this one, Shift select this one, do Shift R, and do the same down here to merge those down. We will still have some shading issues here. If you want to, you can do Control R, then E, and bring this edge a bit closer to help correct that shading issue. If we want to, we can do another edge loop around here as well with Control R, but we will leave that for a bit later. So for now, we're going to save it. Just go to File, Save.